Hi, Mario.
Hi, Harold.
Hi.
Where did you guys finish yesterday?
We finished all of eight.
Okay, very
Yeah,
good.
yeah. He was very thorough. I think we had the very last, yeah, the very last line on 8b3.
Okay.
It's so interesting. This Gemara, they're so busy with you. Do you pull a camel or do you push a camel? Do
You
you
pull
ride an
it.
ass? Do you pull your ass?
You're pulling. You have to pull the camel.
You have to pull a camel. You have to push a jackass.
The donkey, you have to
Yeah,
lead him.
yeah. It's very interesting. There's a science to this somehow or other. They did research.
Yeah. In everything. There's certain things that you hear, you think, how do they know those things
Yeah, how do they
a,
know that? Yeah,
a thousand, 1,500 years ago? No, how much? Yeah.
yeah, 2000. No, maybe
Yeah.
50. Yeah, funny.
That's when they wrote it, but before that they were talking about it for years and years, right?
Right. Yeah.
For more than 2,000 years. Oh, Ernest, yeah.
Aaron is there.
What about tomorrow? What time is it? 7:30?
Yeah, 7:30. Shabbos is over quarter to seven, so you gotta hurry.
Yeah.
They're changing the clock Saturday night, so next week will be if they rearrange everything.
Yeah, next week on Shabbos we'll learn in shul.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But
Mario, you have to bring the
tomorrow
iPad
night?
to show next week.
What about tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night, 7:30 Daf, 8 o'clock Navi.
Okay. All right.
Rav Yehuda Omer, we're on test 9 Amud Aleph. Rav Yehuda Omer lo'olam lo yikonad shetei Mashiach begamel v'anaga b'chamor. Each animal has its own unique way of being acquired. A gamel has to be led,
Oh,
pulled, and a chamor has to be led with, however, with the reins. Ktani miyas. O shayechad Moshe v'echad manik. So Moshe Manig in those techniques work. Aval roichev riding it low. So Gemara says no. Who hadn't afilu roichet? Really, riding it would also acquire. Hadik tani Moshe Manig. Why did it mention those? Lafukim Rav Yehuda Shomar Ajite Mashicha Begamavan Bechamor. So according to the Chachamim, you can do Mashicha to any animal. You can do Hanaga to any animal. According to Rav Yehuda, it's very specific. Mashicha for a camel, Hanaga for a chamel. Kamashwan afilu ibchanami kani, that according to Chachamim, either one would work, including roichev, riding. So the Gemara wants to know Yachil Arvinu v'lisnenu. Why not read it? Shnayim shayu moishchin umanigin bein begamel bein bechamor. If you're correct that each technique works for all animals, it should have written like that, but it didn't. So yeah. There is one approach that doesn't work. Wasn't clear which one. Some said pulling a donkey. That's not normally the normal way of leading it. Or being manig a gamel. Now, is the moisev safe? There are those that learn the sugya completely differently, that they ask a question from the end of the Mishnah, where it said, B'mida zu kana, in this mechanism, you acquire. Now, mida zu is exclusionary, lemute mai. Isn't it lav lemute rochev? it's coming to exclude riding. So the Gemara says no. Limu'uti ibcha. Manig begamo, moshech bechamor. So iachi, well, that's the same as Rabbi Yehuda. So there's no machlokes. So one of the approaches is not koine. Is the amri mashicha bechamor? Some say it's using mashicha by chamor. Ve'ikid amri hanaga begamo. Toshma. Bring a proof. Echad rochuv chamor. If somebody's riding a donkey, echad tofis b'mosar, holds on to the reins, kana chamor and kana mosera. The one riding the donkey acquires the donkey. The one holding on to the reins acquires the reins. Shema mina rachov kani. Well, that seems to be a clear proof that riding acquires. So the Gemara says, "Achanami, we're not talking about just simply riding. You're riding and you're kicking the animal in its flanks. Bimanig biraglat, you're directing the animal with the person's feet. Ihachi, if riding is a good kinyan, what's wrong with riding and holding on to the reins? Why, if riding and kicking acquires, nikni nami rachel v'mosera. What's wrong with riding and holding on to the reins? If he doesn't acquire the reins, he doesn't acquire the chamor. So ema kana chamor v'chatzi mosera. The one riding and holding on to the reins acquires the donkey completely and half the reins. The one holding on to the reins only and leading the animal, zeh kana chatzi mosera. So bishlam arochav kani. So I understand if you ride and hold the reins, you acquire half of the reins. The kamagbile, because you did an act of hagbah on the reins, and a bendas, and he's a halachically valid person. Elatofus b'baser ma'ikoni. The one who's holding on to the reins, through what is he acquiring? The other part of the rein that he's not holding is hanging on the donkey. And we said he doesn't acquire the donkey. So through what mechanism does the guy holding on to the reins acquires it? Ema, so you have to amend to say that what we mean is Zet, the one who rides it, Kana Chamor, the Kula Mosera, acquires the donkey and the reins. V'zeh Kani Mashatafis Biyado. He acquires that which is in his hands. So the Gemara says, "Hi, my im tim saloymar hamagbia mitzila chaver kana chavero." Somebody picks something up to acquire it for his friend. It works. That's, he has in mind his friend. But this guy's holding on to the reins, has himself in mind, not his friend. And if he doesn't acquire, like we say, he doesn't acquire the reins beyond what he's holding, how can he acquire it for somebody else? Ravashi, Zeh, the one who rides, the one who leads, Kana Chamor Beis Pagea. The Beis Pagea are the part of the reins that are tied around the head of the donkey. Zeh, the one who holds on to the reins in front of the animal leading it, Kana Mashatafis Biyado. He basically acquires that which is in his hand. Hasha'ar, the reins that are between the face of the animal, what he's holding, lo kana lo zev lo zev, nobody acquires it. Because nobody did an act of acquisition on that part of the reins. Ravo Amar. Loilam kitiktani. Let's go back to the way we learned before without the amendment. And so why does he acquire the reins? Hoil v'yachal anatka. he can pull the reins, ulavia etzlon, bring the animal to him. Since he can do a meshicha, even though he didn't lift it, it's like it's his. V'hader of Avo berusahi. That which Rav Avo said is not a svar that's based in fact, and does not. We throw it out of the base metric. If we're not going to throw out Rav Avo, we have another problem. Talis shehimunachas chatzi al gabi karka v'chatzi al gabi omu. You have a garment, part of it's on the ground, part of it's on a pillar. One came, lifted the part of the garment that was on the ground. Another person lifted up the part of the garment that was on the pillar or the post. So hachanami the kamo koni vasrolo koni. Are you going to tell me that the first guy who picked it up to his reshus acquires, the second guy doesn't? Hoil v'yachol, since the first guy can lenate kolav could have taken the whole garment and pulled it to him, but we don't paskin that way. Ella hadravavo brusu. It's clear that Rav Avo tried to advance is not correct. So we still haven't resolved the question about whether somebody who just rides an animal without kicking it is an active acquisition. Toshma. Rabbi Yezer Oimer. Rachuv besada umanig be'ir. He rides an animal in the field, or he leads the animal in the city with kana. In both lechora, both methods acquire it. Seems like Rachuv is acquiring. So the Gemara says no proof from there. Achanami, in that case, maning baraglav. It was a case where he was, yes, sitting on the animal, kicking it, and therefore directing its direction with his feet. That's how he acquired it. It's like manig, not Rachuv. Freak the Gemara, Yachi, I know manig. Well, manig. What's the difference? If it's a form of manig, then what kind of chiddush is it? Trey gavni manig. You can be manig an animal with a rope leading it. You can be manig an animal by sitting it and kicking its flanks and having it go in a certain direction. So, if that's correct, that we're talking about a case where he rides it and kicks it, then Rachuv Ba'ir, why did it only say Rachuv Basodeh acquires? Rachuv Ba'ir my time alokani. If he's riding the animal in the city, why shouldn't he acquire it? Amrav Kana, in a crowded city, it's not the normal thing to see a person riding a horse. There, it's much more common to see somebody walking a horse, leading it with a rope. Period. Amar Rav Rav Kana. Elamiyata. Hikbia Arniki B'Shabbos. Person sees a purse in the street on Shabbos, picks it up. So, if you just said that if it's not the derech, for example, to ride an animal in the city, it's not a method of acquisition, are you telling me, therefore, since ein darko shel bnei adam l'hagbi arniki b'Shabbos, a person is muktzah, so it's not the derech of a person to pick it up on Shabbos. So are you going to tell me that in such a case you would not acquire it? Elamai. So what would the other side say that said that it does acquire? Mada Ovid V'Kani. Yeah, he wasn't supposed to do it, but he did it, and therefore he acquires it. So Achanami by somebody riding a horse in a city, yeah, it's not the minig, it's not the derech, but why not say the same svara? Mada Ovid V'Kani. He acquires it. So the Gemara now is going to change and that we're not talking about finding something in the street and picking it up, a Metziah. Rather, b'meka chumem karskina, we're talking about purchasing. The Amar lay, the seller says, Kani kederch shnadim koyin. Here's the item, acquire it in the normal manner through which people acquire items. So the question is, what's the derech of acquisition? Now, Irishus Arabim hu kani. In Irishus Arabim, it is the derech of people to ride even in the city. Or Adam Choshevu, a prince, a governor, an important person. Most of those people rode an animal. So for them, kani. But the ishahi, it's not the derech. She cannot hold an animal with a rope. It might pull away from her. So it would be her derech to ride it. The inish zilu, if it's like a low person, where such a person might ride an animal, even though it's not etiquette to do so, he would also be koined. Those are the examples by which acquisition would be acquired. Boy Rabbi Lazar. Hoimer lechavero mishach behemazu liknos kelim shalel. There are metaltalin, bags, baskets, all sorts of things on the back of an animal. And you give your friend a rope, and you said, do mashicha to this animal, and by virtue of that, acquire the kelim that are on the animal. He's selling those. Mao. So first, what do you mean liknos? Miyarmalei knei? He didn't say be makne this. If he doesn't say clearly be makne it, then it's not, there's no kinyan. So yes, what he means is mashach behemazu uknei kelim shaleh, and thereby acquire the kelim. Mao. Now what's the shaila? What's the fundamental question we're asking here? Remember, mashicha, pulling a rope tied to an animal, is a method of acquisition of an animal. It's not the standard mechanism of acquiring kelim. What's the standard mechanism of acquiring kelim? Hagbah, being magbia. So that's our shaila. Does mashicha work? Olo, amarava. I amar leknei behemo knei kelim. If he said acquire the behema and acquire the kelim, mikana kelim, would he acquire the kelim with that language? We have an issue that the animal at that point is considered a chotzer mahalechasi. It's a moving chotzer. And even if he maybe acquires the animal, he doesn't acquire the kelim because it's a moving chotzer. The chotzer ma'alechas loikana. You can't acquire kelim in a moving chotzer. The chite mekisha amda. Maybe when the animal stops and it's not a chotzer ma'alechas anymore, maybe at that point he acquires it. The rule is, if the items are in movement, even when they come to rest, you can't acquire. So there is a mechanism to acquire it. If the behemoth was tied up and you handed the reins to it and you did mashicha, once you acquire the behemoth, it's like a chotzer. And therefore, since your chotzer can acquire kelim on your behalf, you can acquire these kelim that's on top of the behemoth as well. Amar Rav Papa Rav Huna, Bereit Rav Yoshua Rava, Elameata, based on that psak, Haim Alech Besfina. Person was traveling by boat. The kavtzu dogim v'naflu tachasfina. Fish jumped and landed on the boat. Are you going to use this svara and say, since the boat is a moving chutzner, and you've established that moving chatzeros cannot acquire on your behalf, are you telling me that you can't acquire the fish that jumped into the boat? Omar lay, a sfina is not a moving chutzner. Sfina menech naicha. Listen to this. This is almost like relativity. A boat is stationary. Ma Yehuda kamantule. The water is moving. But the boat is a stationary thing. And therefore, you can view it as a chutzner, and the fish will be acquired by the boat. And that's the halacha. So we don't view a boat as moving. The boat really is stationary. The water is moving.
Well, not if you have a motor. If you have a motor, it's different. This is just like a rowboat they're talking about.
Correct. Because then it has its power. Yes, you have.
Can apply to any of the current can be taking the boat. It doesn't need a motor, but it's a moving chutzner.
Well, in
No,
this
it's not a
case,
moving. Chazal view it that the boat is stationary and it's the water that's moving, and therefore it's not a moving chutzner. Harold wants to say that's
If
if
it's
it's
a motor.
that's if it's a boat that is traveling in the current. If it's got power, it might be different.
Any boat that you have, right? It moves. That's
Moves
why
in the
boats
current. Moves in the current.
Current will move it anyway. Okay.
Yeah, but
it moves anyway. So the fact that they viewed as stationary has to be for everything. It can't be just for lechatzaim.
Yeah. I don't see that they distinguish between. Now remember, in the time of Shulchan Aruch, they didn't have motorized boats. That was Robert Fulton, 1805. The Shulchan Aruch wrote in 1500. So there were no motorized. I mean, they traveled by sail.
Yeah, but they had a boat that had oars or they had sails.
Yeah.
They had
Always
slaves. Stroke.
Stroke.
Yeah.
Like in Ben Hur.
Amrla Ravina Ravashi. Elamayata. So if you're going to tell me that a moving chutzner doesn't acquire, a woman is walking Shusarabi. The husband throws a get into her chest, or she has a basket that she has on her head. Because she's moving, the basket's moving, and we view it as a moving chutzner. So Amar Lei, Ravashi said, Kolsa Meinach Naicha. And the basket, even though from the reference point, if you were on the side, you would see the basket moving. It's really considered to be at rest. Kalsa Meinach Naicha, the Iu Zika Misagimatuta. She's walking, but the sal, and therefore when the get falls into the basket, it's considered like a chutzner kavua, and it's coined for the bailim. Einstein did these thought experiments, with light, and he's on, and he's standing off on the side, and who's moving and who's not moving, and that's really the theory of relativity comes into play here. Mishnah. Bava Metziah. Person's riding an animal, and he sees a lost object on the ground. A friend of his was walking alongside of him. Tenali, give it to me. Notla. So the friend that's on the ground picks it up. I was zoiche in it. Zachaba. And therefore I acquired it, even though he didn't see it first. V'imishenosnolo. But if the guy who's standing on the ground picks it up and gives it to the guy on the horse, and the guy on the horse says, Ani zachiti batchila, lo amar klum. His saying that amounts to nothing. It doesn't acquire through Amira. So he can't acquire it because it sounds like since from his words, he didn't have kavanah to acquire it when he picked it up, he has no ability to be coined. Tananasa. By Hilchos Peya, where the farmer has a field with 4 corners, you have to leave the 4 corners for the aniyim. Misha like peya. Somebody picked up the peya on behalf of the aniyim. The Omar. Harezu, this which I harvested, belongs Laploini Oni. I'm picking it up on behalf of Chaim Yankel, the poor person. Eliezer Omer Zochalo. The person who picked it up on behalf of that Oni can acquire it for that Oni. There's no kinyan. And he can still give what he picked to the first Ani that he meets. Amar Lamar Yishud Levi. This machlokes is me'ashir le'ani. The guy who's picking up the peya in our case is wealthy. He's not zoicha to peya. So he has no ability to be zoicha it for another ani. Shurav Eliezer served migudi boy mafkir nichsev havi ani v'chazilei archanami chazilei. Now that the Chachamim say, since he doesn't have the schus to do it now, he can't. But Rabbi Eliezer holds, since at any time, even a wealthy person can be mafkir, can say, all of my assets don't belong to me, and then he becomes an oni. Now he's roy to pick up the peya. So he's roy in this case as well, potentially. We use the principle of migu, that if he can do it for himself, because potentially he can become an ani, he can do it for the ani that he was being zoicha for. Rabbanon Savri, so we use 2 migus. We use the migu that maybe he could become an ani by being mafkir his assets. And then we use a second migu, that since I can acquire it for myself, I can acquire it for somebody else. Rabbanon say chad migu amrinon, tre migu lo amrinon. You could only learn 1 migu. Like when we have a drabonon, not a rabbonon. We have 1 takonis rabban. Takonis rabban on top of another takonis rabban, we don't learn. Ava me'oni le'oni. If it's the oni who is harvesting these corners, and he himself was an oni, divrei kol zochalo. So everybody holds he can be zoicha on behalf of the other ani. We're only using 1 migu. Migu de zochil nafshi zochinami lechafri, because he can acquire it for himself. He can acquire it for his friend. Amr of Nachman Lula. Lema Mar. Why don't you say like this? Maybe even me'oni machlokas. Maybe Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim are arguing even if an ani is the one who is harvesting. Because Metziah, when it comes to a lost object in the street, there is no nafkamina whether you're wealthy, whether you're poor. Hakol aniyim etzlo. Everyone has the same schus. Even if you were Rothschild or J. Paul Getty, you're walking the street, you can pick it up and you can acquire it. There's no din if you're wealthy, you have no reshus on a Metziah. Utnan, our Mishnah, you're riding on an animal, the Rasa Metziah, and you saw just by sight a lost object on the ground, and you told your friend, pick it up and give it to me. Not Lavoma Nizachisi, but the guy who picked it up says, I want it, Zachabo. So, so let's continue this. Let's continue this tomorrow. It's a good subject. Okay, good Shabbos, everybody.
Right.
But it's a great sugya because you see that if you're passive, you don't have any balance. You have to be active.
You have to be
That's
active.
active.
Be active.
But very specifically based on the animal. It's
Yeah,
very-
no, but as long as you're active, you can't be riding on a horse and
So it's
expect to
fine.
acquire it. That's not